commission to order. This is our regular meeting. Can we start with a roll call and quorum?
Yes. Let's see. Fred Cobb, excused. Janice Bankston. Chris Diana. Ann Hines Silvis.
Here.
Lauren Carplus. Here. Jerry Moreland.
Here.
Karen Hodgen Jones. Here. Abdul Hakim Salam.
Here.
Michael Brown. We have a quorum.
Thanks, Kelly. The first item on our agenda is to review and approve or make recommendations for any corrections to the minutes. The minutes are in your packet. That's from March 28th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from March 28th? Yep. Is there a motion for approval? A correction? Okay, we can start with a correction.
My last name is misspelled. S-A-L-A-A-M.
Okay.
S-A-L-A-A-M. Okay. Well, all the letters were there. They're just in the wrong order. Thank you. Any other corrections before we entertain a motion for approval?
I had received an email from Janice Bankston
Yes.
that her last name was spelled wrong.
Okay.
And
So
asked
you
if
guys
we-
got that correction?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Kelly.
The S and the T are switched.
Any other changes, corrections? Motion for approval? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Jerry? Motion made, seconded. All in favor of approving the minutes with these corrections as noted, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Minutes are approved. We're moving on to petitions and communications. Those would be written petitions and communications, but Kelly said there are none that were received. So the next item is audience participation. Just had so. We're right on the topic of audience participation. Your timing is perfect. Would you like to speak to the commission, or is your topic on the agenda?
I have no topic. I'm an observer.
Okay, great. Welcome. Nice to have
Relatively
you.
new in town and just here to see what you're doing.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for joining us.
We do
Okay.
have a sign-in sheet back
Do I
there.
need to?
Yeah, if you could do that, so
Sure.
thank you.
So we're moving on to the staff report. So Kelly, do you want to lead us through the staff report?
Yes. So, showing the activities and updates, accomplishments since our last meeting, you'll see under HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development, that we received 3 letters from them. The first one was regarding our CDBG 2017 timeliness test. This is a requirement that HUD, every May 2nd, they do a test to see if you are at a certain level or below as far as spending of your allocation. So it has to be at least 1.5 or less. So we were at, a month before, we were at like 1.66. And so HUD sent us the letter just reminding you that you need to make sure, you know, when we do the actual test that you are below 1.5. And so we actually had a draw that we did that reduced, and so we actually ran the test internally and found that we are at like 1.46 or something like that. So, and then they ran another test and said, yes, you are below where you need to be, congratulations, and then they'll officially run their official test in May. We also received our letter regarding monitoring of our Community Development Block Grant Program. they had told us that they were going to be monitoring us in May, and then they sent us the official letter saying, here is what we're going to look at. And part of it is that there are items that they requested for what they call a pre-review. And we need to send those items by May 1st, and so we're working on them this week to gather all that information. And then the third letter was regarding our program year-end review, 2015 program year. Their response to, initially they sent us a letter saying, we reviewed your CAPER, your year-end report, and there are things that we found that you needed to submit further information. And we submitted that, was our first response, and this letter from HUD said, we accept everything you sent us, and your CAPER is not complete. So, which is great because we have, of course, knowing our home monitoring, it took us 7 or 8 responses before we got that close. So to have only one response back was great. So that is now complete. Then you'll see things that we did. We received an email from IDA that the abandoned property program application was approved, and that is one of the agenda items, is the resolution to authorize our participation in that program. Also, we are working on next year's budgets, annual action plan, the amendments, Highland Green. We worked on an income survey for Elnack neighborhood. Because with the last census, they were actually below the 51% low mod. It was like 47%, but we feel that it's they only do a certain sampling, and so we felt that there actually is probably more than the 51%, or at least 51. So we are working on that process with an intern from U of I. That's actually something that she was interested in doing, so a friend of Matt's. So, and then also working with Village of Rantoul regarding intergovernmental agreement, and we, because of the timeliness of getting that, we took that directly to council last night, which they approved. It's helping the administration for their community development block grant program. Because their staff person is no longer working there, Mike Lushin, and so they found out after he left what all is involved in administering CDBG. So we are going to help with them with that, including helping them with their CAPER, and which is due soon. So that, and then we also did an intergovernmental agreement with Rantoul to do a countywide land bank feasibility study. The Rantoul, Champaign, the county came together. We've been part of these meetings to discuss, is a land bank warranted, needed, is it feasible for our county? And so we are all sharing the cost of that, and having this study done, that if it works out, it may be that will relieve staff of some things to do with that. So
Kelly?
yes.
Can you give us a little background about the definition and purpose of the land bank?
A land bank is a separate entity from. It can be a governmental. I mean, right now in Illinois, there are not really any regulations regarding land banks. There are at least 3 that I know of. There's one that Cook County has a land bank, and I think it is connected to the actual county. There is a South Suburban land bank, and so a lot of the south suburbs of Chicago are involved in that and have agreements. And then we, there's also one that was newly set up with Vermilion County. So the purpose is to relieve the burden of cities, municipalities dealing with properties that are blighted, the land bank can then take, purchase, acquire those, and they can hold on to them. If there's housing on there, they can rehab the housing, and then, so it's like a self-sufficient
So does
entity.
it hold title to those properties?
I think so.
Yeah.
So we're just being a part of this study to see if it's something that is worthwhile for us to be involved in.
On a countywide basis?
Yeah, they do hold title. Could you maybe, while you're speaking to that, speak to their source of funding?
I think it depends. Some of them get funding from like the municipalities. Others, they might have some startup, or they get grants, or once they initially maybe get some seed money from the communities, then they become self-sustaining, and when they purchase, they sell the lots and the housing, and that's how they keep getting revenue in that way, from what I gather.
What impact would that have on the county funding, the ones that I've heard of, they somewhat replace the municipality's function of acquiring land?
I think so. It would, I know Rantoul initially came up with the idea because of all of the properties on the old base, and having a land bank that could then deal with all of those properties, then that would save Rantoul having to deal with that and the cost and everything. The land bank would be the one that would be involved with those properties.
Yeah, but just as a commentary, some of the experience that I've seen and or read with those is that you can often find, the question can often be the balance within a county.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're going to use county-wide resources from all the municipalities, and there's often a single blighted site that's the goal, or predominantly so, which in this case could be the old base and the number of foreclosures there, et cetera, you can kind of have a siphoning off effect of rehabbing blighted properties in the municipalities themselves, because their
Right.
budget is there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, the one that was in Vermilion County that was set up, we're using that same company to do this feasibility, just to kind of see if this is something that can be done, if it's something that's worthwhile to look at. So that's kind of where we're at. And then once that's done, which would probably sometime this summer, then we'll see what the results are and then go from there.
If I might ask another question at the same time along those same lines, has there been any discussion kind of with this ongoing thing that's been there for a number of months now with Rantoul, with regard to Rantoul rejoining the consortium?
That has been in our talks. They've also discussed that they're interested in the possibility of joining the home consortium. We have to look at the regulations, and they might need to change their grant year, their cycle, because right now, according to the regulations, everybody has to be on the same fiscal year and grant cycle, and Rantoul is not. They're on a different cycle. They're May 1st to April 30th.
Then they must have changed theirs since they left the consortium.
Well, I think they, from what I gather and talking with Mike Lushin, who was actually the home coordinator here before he went to
Right.
Rantoul, and he said that initially when they were in the home consortium, the thought they were kind of tentatively in the consortium with the understanding that Rantoul would change their cycle, and that didn't happen for whatever reason, and so then they were not able to stay in the consortium. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So,
I seem to recall there was a little more than that to it.
it might be that was of course that was a long time before
Yeah, it was.
before I started. But yeah, so they've indicated that they're interested. Yeah, so that may be something that
Yeah,
we may
it
look
would
at.
seem, I know one of the issues at the time was that they felt they wanted to be more independent. Because the consortium was very heavily weighted towards the southern end of the county, obviously. And had their own staff and so forth, but it would appear that now if you guys are gonna be doing an awful lot of the work for them, then that reason really isn't there anymore.
Right, right. So yeah, we'll keep, as we're working with them on the CDBG, I'm sure we'll keep talking about that too. And so then you can see just all of us working on monitoring and budgets. Shows the meetings that we've attended as well. And Matt is not here because he's at another training in at HUD in Chicago. So, and he will be back tomorrow. And then hopefully that will be done with the trainings for a while. So, with that, if there's any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, that's the staff briefing.
Any questions for Kelly? Thank you, Kelly. You guys are busy. We're on to old business. Is there any old business to bring up for the commission? None. New business, and we have 3 items of new business, 3 resolutions. So do you want to walk us through the resolutions, and then do you want us to deal with those in a group or individually?
I would say individually because
Okay.
they are separate
Okay.
items.
Okay.
So the first one is the resolution approving the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium Annual Action Plan for 2017-2018. So the issue is to review and make a recommendation to provide any input. We took it to council last night as well, so that they were both going at the same time, and let council know that we were bringing it this evening, and that if there were any comments, that we would let them know by next week when they actually vote on it. They just discussed it last night. So we are at the end of the 30-day public comment period. And so any comments that we receive, which we actually haven't received any, but if we did, and we can still get comments before we submit, so we can incorporate those comments and input, and it's due to HUD by May 15th, although HUD has stated that if they aren't, as of yet, we don't know how much money we're going to be getting yet. We haven't heard. So basically, HUD asked us to all be ready, and then when they find out, then we make the appropriate changes to our budget and then submit it. So it could be after May 15th. It just depends on when they figure out and find out from Congress what HUD will be getting. So, but we definitely have stated that all our activities will be proportionally increased or decreased from the estimated funding levels to match actual federal allocation amounts once we are notified of the allocation and prior to submission of the annual action plan to HUD, which was the wording that was recommended by the Chicago field office staff. In the annual action plan, it includes budgets for the Community Development Block Grant and the Home Partnership Investment Program. In the memo were listed dates. I think at one point we had dates listed when we had our public hearings and neighborhood meetings. They were in January when we had those. We note that CDBG and home programs, we have them at the same levels of funding, except for CDBG, we've increased the program delivery because of increase in staff expenses, and that is can be administration, and it has to be tied to addresses and actual projects. So that helps with staffing costs. And then neighborhood cleanup, because of rising costs and limits and funding sources, we are decreasing that from 2 cleanups to only 1 cleanup. And that will save us money, so, and the city as well. So those are the 2 major changes. All the rest of the programs are all at the same level so far. And then, with that, if there's any questions, like I said, we recommend approval of the resolution. And any questions? Yes.
I had a question about the CDBG transitional housing programming and transitional housing personnel. Can you remind me again of where those are actually going, where the money is actually being spent for those?
The staffing is for actual, like, myself, and then the programming is for, like, utilities, because we own the houses, so so that's what the TH money goes for, is for utilities, residential services. So if the in order to help with self-sufficiency, if a person needs a bus pass, then we can go get a bus pass for them. So that's what's the transitional housing. At one point we had 5 houses. Now we're down to 2.
Are there other questions for Kelly? Are we ready to make a motion based on what she's presented? So this would be a motion for a recommendation, and then it would go to council, even though they looked at it. They're still
Yes, we would let them
wanting-
know.
Okay.
Yeah, because I would be doing another memo
Okay.
to them and letting them know that you had
Okay.
approved as well,
Okay.
if that's so how you choose to
Okay.
vote.
So is there a motion?
I'll move that we forward the resolution approving the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium Annual Action Plan for fiscal year 2017, 2018 to the Urbana City Council with a recommendation for approval.
Thanks, Chris. Is there a second? Second. So the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So the motion passes, and we'll send that to council with a recommendation for approval.
Yes, I would definitely let them know that you had reviewed and had questions and that you approved
Great.
the recommendation, so.
So now we're on to the second one.
Okay, this is a resolution approving modifications to the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium fiscal year 2014, 2015, and 2015, 2016 annual action plans. What we're doing is we are modifying by reallocating the Urbana Home Consortium's home budget to allow for funding of projects that were submitted through the request for proposals process and selected by the Urbana Home Consortium, which we had the agencies that were approved, Courage Connection for their TBRA program, Habitat for Humanity for new construction or acquisition rehab projects, and then Navicor Solutions in cooperation or collaboration with the Champaign County Community Reinvestment Group to administer down payment assistance. Again, this was also on the city website because it's a major amendment to our annual action plans. We have to have a 30-day public comment period on that as well. So we put it on the city website along with the current annual action plan. We put that there was the amendments as well. And that also ends today. So, and this The RFP and this modification is so that we will meet our home commitment issue by August of 2017. I believe the total amount was a little over $500,000. Most of it is City of Champaign's allocation of home funds in $455,000, and we added $50,000. And so all the agencies received $150,000 plus some program delivery to help them with the administration of the program. So the amendment moves funding from both Champaign and Urbana's neighborhood revitalization projects into this, we're calling it a consortium-wide project. And a lot of this is funds that are like carryover funds, and that's and now that we have this new accounting system, this is like the last year of all the old stuff, and then after that, then it's like every year we have to make sure that we meet our commitments instead of looking at a whole pot in the past and could use some of it to make our commitments. So that's definitely a change, and so we'll make sure that we keep on top of that. So again, reprogramming these funds will ensure that we're able to commit and meet our commitments with home funds. So
Are there questions for Kelly? Or
yeah, go ahead.
other questions? Any questions for Kelly?
Yeah, this also went to council last night as well,
Okay.
so they knew that it was going to be discussed here as well, and that we will also let them know when we meet with them next that it was discussed and voted
Okay.
on here.
Okay.
So,
Anybody ready to craft a motion with our recommendation? Jerry?
I move that we forward the resolution approving modification to the City of Urbana and the Urbana Home Consortium fiscal year 2014 and through 15 and fiscal 2015 through 16 annual action plan to the Urbana City Council with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
A second? Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we will forward that to City Council with a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
thank you.
And now we're on number 3.
Okay, this is the last item, and this will actually be going to council next week. We are taking it directly to council with it coming here. We did let them know last night that it would be coming to the commission, and gave them a copy of the agreement and asked them to review it, and that so they could vote on it next Monday. So this is a resolution authorizing the city to participate in IDA, the Illinois Housing Development Authority, the Abandoned Property Program. The Illinois Housing and Development Authority, they created the Abandoned Property Program through Municipal Relief Fund dollars. So it's similar to the Blight Reduction Program, but it's a different pot of money, administered by the same entity, same staff at IDA, administer both. But so this statewide program is supported by residential foreclosure complaint filing fees. And how they set it up is Cook County, the city of Chicago, then Cook County, then Collier counties, and then like the rest of the state. So we had our community development associate, that was part-time with us and part-time with the planning division, assisted in the application, which got approved. So this is the agreement with them. So, and the program is a little different in that, like, we cannot acquire properties, but it does help with costs incurred for maintaining, securing, and clearing abandoned properties within our jurisdiction. So, and then we were notified that we received $71,000. So we had to submit and execute a conditional commitment letter first to let them know that we were accepting the funding, and then they let us know additional steps that we needed to complete. And the program, I believe, will begin, actually, the funding will be available after July 1st. Part of the requirements of the conditional letter stated that we would submit a resolution within 30 days of the closing date, stating that we would authorize and execute this agreement and any other documents required or needed. The agreement with IDA does confirm the city's commitment to the goals that are outlined in the consolidated plan for 2015-2019, which is supporting and preserving Urbana's neighborhoods as vibrant places to live, identifying and encourage or assist in removal of blighting and deteriorated structures from neighborhoods. So in the memo, you can see what eligible costs are for: cutting of neglected weeds or grass, trimming of trees, extermination of pests or prevention of pests, removal of garbage, debris, graffiti, boarding up, closing off, locking windows, that thing to make it so it's not accessible to anybody to enter. Also, surrounding part or all of the properties, underlying parcel with a fence or a wall, and then demolition or rehab of the property. They cannot be used for reimbursement of administration costs. So, so per the requirements of the program, we're responsible for undertaking or contracting of all activities related to this grant. So we also have, I think, a budget was listed. So we attached showing some different addresses and costs, and this is what we will be submitting to IDA along with the agreement. So and then this will work also in conjunction with our community development block grant. If there are any activities that might need some extra funding, we have property acquisition, demolition, construction money that we could add to this grant. Like we did this with the BRP as well. We had a cap on how much we could cover for each property that we acquired or demolished, and if it was over that, we used some of our community development block grant. So with that, we recommend approval of the resolution, and so that the proposed agreement, we can proceed with that. So if there are any questions.
Kelly, I have a question. Usually these grants come with some portion allowed for administrative costs, so are you guys just folding it into other activities and saying this is extra money and you're
Yeah.
doing the administration out of something else? I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like the right thing to do, but
Yeah,
you can't
since
do
it's
everything this way.
Right. Yeah. Most of our grants do have administration. Like the BRP had per address like $1,700, which we ended up splitting with Habitat because we figured out our duties and their duties were about half and half. So, but yeah, one thing about the community development block grant, that administration can cover a lot of different related, and if we're using, of course, some CDBG in this as well, so that definitely will cover that. This is probably the only one I can think of that we've gotten that doesn't have any admin with it.
So I noticed with the it looks like they're mostly mowing and demolition properties that you're looking at. Maybe as a recommendation or something, even outside of this grant, that you might want to consider. I live in the Highland Greens neighborhood where they're building the new places. And there's been a huge uptick in trash on
Okay.
that road on Kerr Avenue. And since they started construction, I don't know if it's the neighborhood just in general, people are starting to just dump their trash because they see the construction site. But it's kind of alarming to go from a neighborhood that was very clean before they started the construction to, I don't know if it's the construction site itself that's dumping waste, but there's just a ton of trash along that road. So that might be something to consider for partial use of these funds,
Okay.
perhaps.
There's also a possibility that we might receive maybe more blight reduction program money. There are some, we had attended a webinar with IDA, and it looks like that there are some communities that didn't spend all their funds. And we have, in some, I think 13 are completed, and we have 2 are like in the final stages, if not done. So we have met the 15 properties that we said we would. So, if that's a possibility that we might get some more funds. There was also a few of the properties that we didn't spend the whole limit because it was property that we already owned. So at the very least, we're hoping that the remaining in between that amount that wasn't spent, that we could use that for another property. So, but yeah, we'll certainly check on about the Highland Green area. We can also check with the construction up there too and see if it's,
Yeah, you can knock on doors too, because
Mhm.
people are talking about it. It's very surprising.
okay.
And it's only since the construction started.
It's probably related to the construction, but we can certainly, we're in contact with the developer and the construction and all that, so we'll check on that.
Couple of questions. I'm assuming there's nothing different in this program's definition of abandoned properties than,
I don't think so. I think it's similar to what the other, again, I think pretty much the main difference is the funding source,
right? Okay.
state versus federal funds.
But I think that would fall in, and I'm not even sure on properties the city owns. I think once the city owns them, they aren't considered abandoned anymore. I'm not entirely sure about that, but that's a
Yeah.
possibility. And it is still residential properties only, right?
Yes.
So it's not commercial,
No.
or I think that might be a problem even with a development property, is that that's not going to be considered residential or abandoned, probably. The other question I had, this budget appears to be recapturing funds from prior years.
Yes.
15, 16, et cetera.
We can do that.
That was kind of my question.
Yeah.
Is that what we're doing? And if so, what impact? I mean, those funds were obviously expended
Yes.
out of where in 2015 and 16, and are we recovering
Yes.
them back to another budget then?
Yes, actually. I believe it was a project that was Public Works. It's also in one of our TIF districts.
Right.
So by helping with this project, then we talked with Economic Development, and they're willing to assist us. So in helping us
And
with
there's
the-
no
with-
problem transferring the funds back
No.
and forth between those programs, really?
No,
Good.
I don't think so, no.
Other questions for Kelly from commissioners? Are we ready to make a motion? Go ahead.
I move to forward the resolution authorizing the city to participate in the Illinois Housing Development Authority Abandoned Property Program to the Urbana City Council with recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second? There's our second, okay. All in favor of approval for that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you all. There's a study session on our agenda, but I don't think we have topics for that, so,
No, we don't.
no? Okay.
It's just part of the bylaws that we have all of these items.
Okay.
And then if there is a study session that come up, we'll certainly let you know, and we would
Okay.
have the topic on there.
Okay, I wanted to mention it. So, having exhausted the agenda, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.